Fans have been witnessing Ian Roussel's automotive magic in a fully customized garage for years. Cameras, however, never captured the true story. The scripts that transform true creativity into phony television moments, the 13-hour filming days in the 115-degree desert heat, and the collapse from heat exhaustion. Ian's identity was gradually being supplanted by the TV production machine. A dark aspect of reality programs that no one discusses was revealed when he eventually spoke out about what was actually happening. In Sunland, California, on November 19, 1970, Ian Roussel was born. His arrival time was recorded in the hospital records as 11:19 a.m., but oddly, his birth year was stated as 1971 on his first driver's license, which he obtained in 1987. A clerical mess brought on by the 1971 Sylmar earthquake, which closed government offices for weeks, was held responsible for the error. His family never forgot the actual date, though. They prepared him a birthday cake every year that was shaped like the numbers 11-1970 on a license plate. Locals were even reminded about the day, because Foothill Boulevard was covered in ice from a rare hailstorm. Ian's mother and baby had to be taken home in a neighbor's F-100 that had been hoisted. Fan pages have been debating his true age since that odd beginning, but Ian doesn't mind. "I'm either 54 or 55 every year," he jokes. "It maintains my youth." During the day, Jerry Roussel, his father, was employed at Lockheed's Skunk Works. Each night, they turned their garage into a workshop. He brought spare metal from the plane home, where Ian, then 8 years old, constructed panels for his homemade go-karts. In one garage, they worked together for more than 4,200 hours between 1978 and 1985. Ian deduced that figure by looking through his father's old, oil-stained project logs. By the age of 10, he was able to read cam lift tables and gap spark plugs. However, Jerry had a rule: prioritize building above driving. They spent $75 on a 1955 Chevy Nomad restoration, which was their largest early project. They used bomber sheet metal to replace the floor for 32 evenings. Ian's present Mojave shop still has that same wagon as a reminder of its origins. In 1989, Ian received his high school diploma from West Valley. He chose to leave his partially completed '29 Ford Model A pickup parked directly in front of the gym rather than arrive in a cap and gown like everyone else. He was instructed not to bring it by the principal because it was made of raw metal and had bright orange wheels. He didn't give a damn. In the school's metal fab final, he received the highest score ever recorded, despite having a 2.7 GPA. 98 from 100. Because he drew his report by hand rather than typing it, he only lost 2 points. Rod and Custom Magazine's 1990 Young Guns edition showcased that car, which was assembled from 11 donor cars and cost $612 in parts. After 2 weeks, he declined a scholarship for the draft. What was his motivation? College is incapable of welding. Ian was the only child. Nobody to share tools with or assign responsibility to in the event that something broke. He had more than 3,100 hours in the garage by the time he turned 18. About a year and a half's worth of work equivalent to a full-time employment. Everything was stored in photo binders by his mother, Donna. The storyboard for the first season was created using those binders when the producers created a fully customized garage. According to family legend, Jerry had previously wished for a second child, but he had second thoughts after Ian, then 5, disassembled the family's washing machine to learn how to operate the spin cycle. He gave him tools for Christmas instead of toys. At 12, he received a stick welder. An Old English wheel at 15. Because of those early investments, he was the only one who could preserve his father's mechanical expertise. In contrast to other children, he never saw cars. Ian viewed cars as sculpture even before he was able to drive. When he was 9 years old, he spent 6 weeks studying the form of a '32 Ford grill by carving a 4-foot model out of foam and covering it with fiberglass. He acknowledged that he didn't even give a damn if the car could move on a 2015 podcast. In his mock-ups, he frequently neglected to include steering wheels. He surprised his teacher by turning in a rolling clay model rather of a painting for art class in the 7th grade. It was only a hatch with no doors. The county honored that model. After threatening to tow away any projects Ian couldn't move himself, his father ultimately made him get a license. Ian claims to be just a guy who builds shapes and adds wheels afterward, even now. Ian never even considered going to college after high school. He plunged right into the car scene in Southern California. While his peers were choosing their majors, Ian was studying under such luminaries as Jesse James, Chip Foose, and Boyd Coddington. During the day, he worked in their shops, and at night, he made his own cars. By the time he turned 22, his artwork was already appearing at important events like the Grand National Roadster Show in SEMA. He had skills from that kind of experience that no school could provide. And he was able to meet those who would subsequently influence his career. Ian launched his own store when he was barely 22. His longevity was not anticipated because the majority of men in the industry were in their 30s or 40s. However, Ian had saved enough money from side gigs and show wins to pay for a small apartment, and his family assisted him in purchasing the necessities. When major collectors began taking notice of Ian in the late 1990s, he had years of expertise under his belt thanks to that head start. He didn't advertise. Just a simple promise: no magazine spreads, no billboards. "I'll construct anything." The word spread quickly. Ian agreed to strange requests while other stores refused. He welded Cadillac components to Ford chassis, made unique aluminum windshields, and constructed space-age bumpers. To receive something that no one else would dare make, clients traveled from all over the state. His stores soon became a spectacle. Only to watch the constructions come together, people parked outside. He got all of his marketing from his satisfied consumers. Ian took a different approach from most builders who were repairing classics to make them appear as though they had recently been manufactured. He removed roofs, lowered frames, and fused disparate pieces to create something completely different. His automobiles were peculiar. Some folks adored them. They were also referred to as punk rock hot rods. According to traditionalists, he was destroying excellent automobiles. However, Ian didn't give a damn about approbation. His goal was to make something unique. Eventually, TV producers and collectors from all over the world took notice of him because of his audacious approach. The initial years were difficult. He earned just enough to get by. During one period, he lived in the rear of the store, sleeping on a couch among his tools and eating ramen. In the mid-1990s, an automobile exhibition in Las Vegas altered everything. Due to financial constraints, Ian nearly gave up on the unconventional rat rod he brought. A team from a documentary was drawn to that particular automobile. After it was broadcast, collectors began phoning. As the list of orders started to grow. Had that incident not occurred, his store might have vanished along with so many others. But it did, and it was a game changer. Ian Roussel constructed a rat rod for a Las Vegas auto exhibition in 2005. He did not know how the crowd would respond. Some groups, such as the Burbank Choppers and the Road Zombies, did not always accept strangers with odd physiques. On the contrary, Ian's invention became the most talked about car there rather than being laughed off. His entire existence was turned upside down by that one incident. It transformed him from a visionary metal craftsman with a torch into one of the most well-known brands in bespoke automobiles. The entire tale was chronicled in the documentary Back from the Dead. And everyone began wondering, who built that car, overnight? An even greater event occurred immediately following the Vegas concert. On the Caddis Report, Ian landed. It is a list of the top 10 custom vehicle builders in the nation. It's difficult to get on that list. It is founded on skill, originality, and impact. For decades, the majority of those on it had been building. However, Ian was standing there, directly next to them. Only a few years prior, his name was barely known in the industry. Now, he was setting a new benchmark with his daring decisions and unpolished, raw style. It was more than a victory. It was evidence that one might violate the rules and still be respected. His creations soon left the United States, as cars were being packed and sent from Long Beach to countries like Germany, Japan, and the Netherlands. It was not only export documentation. For collectors who wanted their own piece after viewing his work on film, they were full-fledged worldwide shipping. That was a feat few solo builders had attained. Even fewer went unsupported by a major brand. It demonstrated that regardless of where they lived, people could relate to Ian's work. Then the requests became frantic. "If you can dream it, I can build it," Ian would always say. People were serious about that. Customers sought cars with more than just a unique appearance. They were looking for narrative rolling machines. Movie-inspired twists or gadgets were among the hidden features that some requested. Others had visions so strange that they had already been rejected by other builders. Ian, however, did not flinch. He managed to make it all seem real. The most bizarre ideas were not disregarded in his garage. They got constructed. Following that, well-known people knocked. Producers, musicians, and movie stars. A few desired vehicles that were prepared for the road. Some needed props or showpieces. It's funny because the majority of them didn't want their identities to be known. That gave his writing an odd air of mystery. However, in private, industry people began to converse. Ian had moved beyond simply making hot rods. People in high places desired what he was making, but they could only get it from him. Strangely enough, it all began in 2003. At that point, Ian mailed a producer a DVD. It wasn't fancy. These are just snippets of his creations intended for a trade show exhibit. However, the DVD was eventually acquired by television producers. Something unique caught their attention. Being on TV was not in his plans. Not that he wanted to. However, the video revealed something authentic. No tricks, no phony showmanship, just raw metal, fury, and talent. In reality, the show didn't air until 2014. MAV-TV premiered Full Custom Garage on March 28. The majority of shows either fail or receive quick greenlighting. It took years. A lot of waiting, production adjustments, and test pilots were all part of the process. However, it defied expectations when it launched. No phony deadlines or stage drama, just building. Each episode was centered on the process, the tools, and the task. Viewers sensed it. After noticing the change, they continued to observe. Ian did an unexpected thing in Season 1. From scratch, he constructed a chopper trike. It's a three-wheeled motorcycle, not a car. It was a private fantasy. What he had desired from childhood. However, going from bare metal to show-ready on TV was a daring step. He made use of enormous tires, a Volkswagen carburetor, a coffin tank, and stretched forks. People couldn't believe it when it made its debut at Chopper Fest. Ian wasn't stuck in one lane, as that episode alone demonstrated. He could construct anything. More than 90 episodes of the show were shown throughout the ensuing decade. Every season brought more builds, more pressure, less time, and more spectators. However, Ian continued. Between 2014 and 2024, the store became a destination. People from everywhere flew in. Some others traveled thousands of miles to have him fix their autos. Content was no longer the only thing on the show. It was evidence that talent was still important. The episode where Ian converted a 1948 Packard into a lead sled for his pal Tom was one of the most cherished. A Mercury would have been the choice of most people. Ian didn't. He grabbed something more robust. The Packard's roof was a complete mess. It required days of grinding, sweating, reshaping, welding, and chopping. But it turned out flawlessly. And the car wasn't the only factor. The topic was friendship. Fans were able to relate to that. They kept on watching it. That build launched Tom into a never-before-seen spotlight and turned into one of the most talked-about episodes in the whole series. Then the electric dune buggy appeared. Ian constructed a clean green off-road vehicle using a forklift motor he discovered buried among trash. The brilliant red paint and lightning bolts gave it a crazy appearance, but the technology and custom adapters underneath were all tech. Real engineering, one-off mounts. Additionally, he worked quickly, completing it in time for a birthday reveal. At that time, in 2017, no one else was considering custom electric builds. When Ian did it before it was fashionable, the media took note. Ian converted an old bus into a mobile workshop shortly after that. It wasn't merely showy. He made the frame stronger. Equipped with equipment for complete production while traveling, and incorporated functional electrical systems. Every element, including the fold-out benches and concealed storage, was handmade. From a rusting shell to a fully functional mobile machine shop, fans witnessed the entire process. He astonished everyone by driving it into a major car event. It was brilliant, not merely hip. The builds weren't remaining local by 2022. Ian's art was packaged and shipped to Japan, Australia, and other countries in Europe, as viewers witnessed. It wasn't a simple export. They were one-of-a-kind, handmade vehicles. In order to ship them, the buyers needed legal documentation, bespoke boxes, and occasionally handwritten letters. Opening the boxes, as if they were unwrapping treasure, was captured on camera. In a sense, they were. Ian Roussel spent 6 years living in the Mojave Desert, one of the most hostile environments on the planet, with his wife Jamie. 115 degrees and perhaps 130 degrees were common summertime temperatures. The area where they lived was close to Furnace Creek, where in 1913 the highest recorded temperature in the globe was 134 degrees. Daily exposure to the sun, wind, and a type of dry heat weakened the body and the intellect. No respite from the dust was forthcoming. There were occasions when the humidity in the air fell to barely 7%. No streetlights, no neighbors, and no respite from the silence. It was the type of life that could either make a relationship unbreakable or ruin it. In the midst of this challenging setting, Ian met Jamie. They connected quickly and deeply. In Las Vegas, Jamie was a hospice nurse until she quit. In the desert, she joined Ian with her teenage son. There were no outside distractions, it was just the two of them and whatever they decided to construct. Jamie evolved beyond a life companion. She immediately became an integral member of Ian's bespoke fabrication business. As Ian worked in the shop, she handled the backstage tasks, such as video editing, answering customer inquiries, and maintaining organization. It was more than a marriage. This collaboration was sustained by ingenuity and perseverance. In 2019, Ian gave Jamie an unforgettable surprise. He made her a 1962 VW Dune buggy from the ground up as a wedding present. The automobile wasn't only attractive. Every detail was expertly created, and it had hand-shaped fiberglass and a metallic flake finish. They showcased the entire project on a full custom garage episode. It was one of those infrequent moments on TV. That was absolutely real. More than just a present, that buggy became. In both their romantic and professional lives, it came to represent what they had created together. However, life wasn't simple there. The loneliness weighed heavily on them. The solitude, the wind, and the heat began to have unexpected effects on them. Jamie had never liked being in front of the camera. Nevertheless, she ended up appearing in a show that was gaining popularity. To keep up, she had to overcome fatigue and fear. To keep abreast of the desert's advances, they occasionally had to relocate their home and workshop. The epidemic then struck. Already confined and isolated from the outside world, they were under considerably more strain. But rather than disintegrating, they kept things together by working on their joint projects. Their decision to not have children together was one of their most private decisions. It enabled them to concentrate entirely on their business, developing their brand and producing automobiles. However, it also carried some weight of its own. They were under pressure from people who didn't get it. The absence of children could make the desert seem even more desolate. There were moments when Jamie talked about aspects of her life that she thought were lacking. They remained firm in their choice, nevertheless. Being aware that all they had put into the world they had made together was theirs. Something began to change as their YouTube channel expanded and the popularity of the TV show increased. A fully customized garage's initial magic gradually evolved into something else. The show felt like authentic storytelling at first, but eventually each episode began to feel the same. A problem or a setup was always present, as well as a dramatic conclusion. Ian was pressured to adhere to a screenplay by the producers. The once enjoyable and impromptu experience began to feel more like a job. Ian said that the production timetables and countdowns started to bother him. It began to seem like a trap, even though supporters thought it was a huge success. Ian didn't build as much the longer the cameras rolled. He spoke the same phrases repeatedly for hours under bright lights. Occasionally, he thought he was performing rather than using his hands to work. By 2020, tools and fabrication accounted for less than half of his time on set. It all came down to emotion, drama, and landing the picture. It seemed to him that he was becoming disconnected from his art. The truth behind those well-executed 42-minute shows was far more brutal. What appeared to be swift, tidy changes were actually the product of stressful, 60-hour work weeks. Builds that were supposed to take months were shortened to a few days. The crew occasionally worked 13 hours straight while filming in hazardous conditions. Welding close to combustible materials, omitting important procedures, and hurrying through delicate tasks. These events took place in order to meet a deadline. They occasionally take shortcuts, Ian subsequently acknowledged. The show required them to, not because they wanted to. The customer meetings also ceased to be genuine. Originally authentic brainstorming sessions became staged situations. Producers pushed Ian and the automobile owners to appear astonished or emotional by giving them words to say. Filming took only a few minutes, but hours. The excitement of sharing crazy ideas with other gearheads was swapped out for phony anxiety and compelled applause. It was no longer about the vehicles. Keeping the show engaging enough for network execs was the goal. The crew's experience filming in the desert during the hottest part of the day was the worst. On one day, Ian passed out from heat exhaustion while filming in a harsh sun. The mercury had risen to 110 degrees. There was hardly any water and he stood next to fully operational machinery. They had to summon paramedics. They persisted for the sake of lighting and camera angles even though everyone realized it was too risky. The risk was substantial, but Ian persisted because the show had to continue. Full custom garage has been a favorite among custom car enthusiasts for many years. However, Ian eventually spoke up about the quiet in late 2023. He wrote a brief but impactful message and uploaded it online. I resign. No drama. No network is cutting the connection. He had a choice. Suddenly, there were no more whispers of low ratings or covert cancellations. Fans were taken aback. For what reason would someone quit their own popular show? Ian gave the exact response. He felt worn out. I'm fed up with the restrictions, the monotony, and the show feeling more like a chore than a love. But unlike other people in the sector, he stayed. Before leaving, Ian gave MAVTV plenty of notice. He didn't simply break down or disappear. He gave an explanation, fulfilled his obligations, and assisted the crew in completing the trip properly. The manner he handled things was admired even by those who didn't enjoy the performance. It wasn't about a breakdown or clout. Protecting his inventiveness before the formula sucked it all away was the goal. The episodes he produced felt like replays of the same structure, and he was under pressure to produce TV programming that didn't align with his true methods. It all accumulated over years of working in 115-degree workshops, completing build after build while according to producer-imposed constraints. The burnout eventually took over. Ian was not upset. He had been worn out. According to him, genuine innovation was consistently impeded by the script. At that moment, he reached his breaking point. You should take this job and shove it, he said. This is no longer where I work. Not a breakdown, not a publicity gimmick, just a builder favoring independence over exhaustion. He didn't abandon his followers, though. With 6 final episodes, Season 9 concluded in January 2024 as scheduled. It began with the question, is that a Cadillac? January 3rd. Featuring builds like Surf and Safari and Keep on Truckin', and continued until January 31st. The show, which had been airing since 2014 and featured more than 80 original works, had a clean ending and a fitting farewell. Most reality programs end or are cancelled. On Ian's terms, this one ended the way it should. Ian had already begun something new before that final season ever aired. He started the full custom Ian YouTube channel in January 2023. It wasn't only a side job. This method of construction was completely new. No outside producers and no rigid runtimes. Some of the episodes lasted 18 minutes. Some went above 90. Supporters praised the candor. The channel reached 100,000 subscribers in just 4 months. One build, the final build for Desert Ranch, ended the year with 2.4 million views. That was only the start. Someone else was getting up behind the camera, too. Jamie. She had been there from the beginning, but she really took the lead in 2023. She joined as an editor, producer, and creative collaborator. Because of her editing, their content went viral. In just 1 week, one of their dog-related episodes received 500,000 views. Their previous production system did not allow for such a speed. By the end of 2023, they had more than tripled their annual production, with 26 complete episodes available on YouTube. Jamie subsequently rose to the position of full co-owner of the company and oversaw a developing staff, influencing everything from sponsor agreements to storylines. Then the emotional part began. They shut down the famous Desert Ranch store in September 2024. For more over 10 years, that 2,600 square foot structure had served as the center of their business. Over 180 buildings emerged from that location. In just 2 days, 750,000 people viewed the farewell video. Fans were devastated. The final job, the last build, broke all their records when it sold for $280,000. However, the shutdown wasn't a failure. Over 2,000 emails were generated in a single week, providing new retail locations and opportunities nationwide. The following step was a significant enhancement. Their new store at the Mojave Air and Spaceport opened in October 2024. With over 4,800 square feet, professional tools, air conditioning, ventilation, and workplaces, they can construct more quickly and cleanly. They completed their first project there, a crazy futuristic attraction named Rocket Rod, in 5.5 weeks. That is over half of how long it used to take. Filming was also made easier by the new venue, which offered excellent video quality and lots of room for guests, events, and teamwork. One build from that YouTube run caught our attention. Little Jewel was the nickname given to the 1956 International COE truck. It was an uncommon model, one of just a few thousand produced. Ian uploaded the entire project online, showcasing each decision and struggle. No edits or scripts, just unadulterated labor and tangible outcomes. In the spring of 2025, when it eventually rolled on its own, supporters viewed it as a symbol rather than a vehicle. This was how actual automobile construction looked. Thrilling, messy, and intimate. Then an even older item arrived. A 4-door Mercury convertible from 1941. It was picked up by Ian in July 2025. Its underlying problems, structural degradation, and scarcity of components were all present. He yet regarded it as a tribute to American auto design. Each piece was unique, and the audience saw every step. He even made a joke about it being Jamie's car, but it also demonstrated how far their efforts had progressed. It was more than simply tools and metal. Their family has grown to include these buildings. A significant event occurred in the conventional TV industry while Ian was flourishing online. Motor Trend Studios ceased all internal manufacturing on November 18, 2024. Roadkill, Gone, every show, and over a dozen additional series disappeared in an instant. All of a sudden, Ian's choice to quit TV didn't seem brave, it appeared wise. Ian was already constructing freely while others frantically looked for platforms and renegotiated contracts.